Thank you so much for joining us on Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have some exciting news. Now, generally, this is the portion of the show that you hear a commercial. You know, we've had plumbing commercials. We've had some Christian entrepreneur conferences from our friend Katie Horner. We have Valentine's Day commercials. We've had food truck commercials. We've had all kinds of commercials, cupcake commercials. I mean, just loads of fun stuff, right? Well, this is my own little commercial. I need your help. That's right, you right now that's listening, that has the AirPods in, maybe that's running, take a moment, maybe this is your breath break. I need your help. See, in September, which I know it's weird, we're in June, why are we talking about September? But in September, I'm going to start my 9th season of Other People's Shoes. 9th season. Now, I know for some of you are like, 9 seasons, where have I been? Well, that's a great question because to date, we've had 131 episodes. Where have you been? You can always, of course, listen to those on demand at opspodcast.com. Great place to go listen. But I need your help. We're starting our 9th season and I need your help. I am in the midst of trying to find some shoes to get into. So if you know someone, or you think you know someone, or if you know someone's brothers, cousins, uncles, nieces, nephews, aunties, grandma, follow all that. If you know that person, will you just send them my way? Really easy to do. You can drop me a line at our connections page at opspodcast.com. Click on that wonderful connections tab. Drop me a little note there. Or if you're like me who hates to write, especially writing things down, not a fun thing, you can always leave a voicemail at opspodcast.com. Pretty easy. Help me out. Season 9 will be here in the fall. What that will be? You'll just have to wait and see. But until then, Lucas, you know what to do.
Hey, come take a walk with me. Not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining us today. By the way, I hope your bags were packed and that you were ready to go, and the taxi was, in fact, outside your door, and it's honking its horn. It's like, let's get on the plane. Let's go across the Atlantic. By the way, I did pack some gummy bears with us because I'm excited, because here's the thing. Back in this amazing year of 1989, I have some amazing friends who are named Martina and Chris. I'm not going to drop last names because I typically don't do that, but they're really good friends of ours, and they're German, and she works for the German consulate, and it was so crazy as a kid to have a German kind of influence in my life, some Oktoberfest, some things like that, and then learning German phrases. My only German phrase I know, and I'm going to give it to you right now, it's Nein, nix beißen, and there's a story behind that, but that is a little homage to my friends, as I said, Martina and Chris. But I never thought in a million years I would ever have an opportunity to actually sit and talk with somebody from the great country of Germany. And so again, going back to 1989, Martina or Chris, one of the two, had brought back to my family in Camp Pendleton, California, Oceanside area. They brought back, and I don't know where I put it. It's gotten lost through the sands of time, but I actually had a piece of the Berlin Wall that David Hasselhoff sang on. I'm just saying. I have that somewhere in the archives, but help me welcome in my guest all the way from Germany. I was trying to think how far we've been on this plane ride together, but we had some gummy bears along the way, and it's amazing. But Alex Lehann, thank you so much for coming on today and giving me a few moments today to walk in your shoes. I just want to thank you and welcome you.
What an intro. Thank you for having me, Neil. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so you came to us from another guest who you had on your show.
Exactly.
And you talked to her, and it was a great interview. And her name is Charlene, and she's fantastic. She's really a nice young lady from Toronto, Canada, and you guys kind of walk some roads together. But I'm just curious about this. Before we get too far down a road together, I'm curious about this. Alex, what size shoes do you wear?
Okay. It would be size 9. Yeah.
Now, is that a European 9 or is that a US 9? Do you know?
Oh, I wouldn't know that actually. No, I have no idea.
That's okay though. We'll go with a size 9. And then is there a certain style or brand that you like more than another?
You know, I love running shoes usually. So, I mean, there's nothing in particular usually. I mean, you know, a good pair of Nikes or a good pair of Under Armours. would usually do.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Just checking, because for me, I too love running shoes. In fact, people have teased for a lot of years that I have too many shoes. Now, I'm going to ask you, got a guy, if you can kind of maybe help me with something here for a little bit, is how many pairs of shoes should an appropriate number be for a gentleman? Say in Europe, or maybe even in Germany, for you specifically in your thought process.
Right. Well, I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I'm pretty relaxed. So I would say, I mean, if that is something, that you really value, if that's something you just really appreciate, I mean, does there really have to be a limit? That's kind of the question. So if you're like, yeah, a huge fan of shoes and just love to collect them and love trying out new pairs of shoes and different kinds, and with every kind of shoe, there's a different story, there's a different type of feeling, right? So I mean, if that's your thing, then I mean, is there ever a need for a limit?
Well, I love that aspect, because I think shoes tell a story. I think they really do. Not only do they kind of share maybe your personality, but they kind of, I think they kind of just, as I said, they kind of tell a story. So in any event, that's what I feel shoes do. So speaking of that German aspect, right? You mentioned that you were in Hamburg. Did I get that right? Or near Hamburg, Germany, right?
Near Hamburg, Germany.
Okay. Yeah. So if we were to fly out there, hang out with Alex for a day, what are we going to go and do in Germany? What would you take us around to do?
Well, the city where I'm from, it's called Hanover. So I must say it's not actually very well known for its tourism. However, there is some really like sweet spots over there. There are some really old sections as well that were not bombed, before kind of World War II. So, I mean, there's some kind of beautiful sectors. Apart from that, there's some beautiful parks, and there's also a big lake near the city center that is like my favorite spot in the city. So I'd probably take you guys there and then, go for a stroll.
All right. That sounds fantastic, because I think there's just so much history in Germany that I think those of us, maybe even on the West Coast or maybe even in the United States in general, don't really know about. I think when some think of Germany, they don't think very positively about it. But my thought process of Germany, again, like I said, kind of in our intro, is I think of gummy bears. My friend Martina was very big on bringing us German candy. I had no idea what the label said. It could have been grasshoppers for all I know. It didn't taste what I think grasshoppers would taste like, but I couldn't read the label, and I did see the bear on the front of it. She did introduce us to Nutella. So and that was a staple as a kid, and so it's like I said, it's just such an honor to kind of talk to somebody that could kind of maybe help me remember that nostalgia of hanging out with my German friends growing up as a kid. So kind of fun. So that's why I was happy that we got to connect. So with that, I want to get into you and your story. So we're kind of on this moment right now where we're talking about people who have been stuck. Now, I know everyone has a stuck story. Everyone has a moment in their life that, man, they were just in that briar patch, in that blackberry bush, maybe in that ditch, laying there looking up going, is this really my life? And how the heck did I get here? Do you have one of those moments? And if you can, walk us back through that moment, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, man, absolutely. I would say, first of all, to that question. And I would say there's not just been one, but there has been multiple. But I would say there's obviously been some that have been, let's say, turning points in my life. And I would say the first one that kind of comes into mind for me was a time period of my life where I was in my young 20s. So I would kind of, describe kind of the place I was in just for a moment there. So the thing with me actually is I've been moving a lot from my childhood. So I was born in Germany. However, I actually grew up in Canada. I lived there for 7 years. So I have actually been moving around multiple times during my childhood. So because of that experience, it was challenging for me to kind of really grow comfortable in my own skin, because I always had to adapt. I always had to adjust to new experiences. And I feel like having had such a multitude of experiences never allowed me to really sink in with myself for who I am. And throughout the process, throughout the experience, I would say that I really picked up on a lot of emotional baggage. And at that time, in my young 20s, that was kind of starting to catch up with me. I remember starting to get off high school, and I started working as a paramedic at the time, wanting to pursue a career as a medical doctor, pretty much following all the expectations that other people had on me. And I must say, like, I have never felt so lost in my life before. I felt completely empty. I felt like there was a void that I could not fill. And I had no idea where to look. I didn't understand myself. I didn't know where to begin with myself. So, and it was exactly kind of as well that experience around being a paramedic that was really detrimental, I would say.
I don't know about you, but I'm not really good with directions, right? Like if you drop me in the middle of the desert, or, maybe even in the middle of downtown Berlin, right? And without Siri or without some aids to guide me, I'm not good at reading a map, which is weird because my dad's a Marine and he's really good at mapping compasses. I'll tell you that if you hang out with him long enough. But without a compass, right, I can easily get lost.
For sure.
Especially if I'm in a foreign land, right? Because let's face it, Berlin to me would be very foreign. Oh,
definitely.
My German wouldn't get me by.
Yeah.
I don't think I could say my phrase too often and people would probably look at me very funny. But you know what I mean? Like, but for me, the reason why I'm asking that question is, was there a compass that kind of maybe got put in your hand or placed in your hand that really kind of helped get you maybe back on that true north to the direction that you're heading in now?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And I must say that compass only started coming when I feel like I hit rock bottom, when I felt like everything that I've been doing up to this point has not been helping me anymore, and I need to do something completely different. And I felt like the path that was pretty much laid out for me, the path that everyone else was taking and was telling me, hey, Alex, take this path. This is a path that will guarantee an amazing life. You're going to be amazing. You're going to be happy when you take this path, right? That path wasn't making me happy. So when I was 23, a good friend of mine was backpacking around Thailand. And that was kind of like the first time where I was kind of introduced to the idea of traveling and being on the road. And I just like the idea of it, just pretty much having your own home on your back, right? And then just traveling the world. And I would say now that I understand myself so much better, I'm a very free-spirited, wild person that loves to explore. I'm a seeker, right? So that part of me was calling me and saying, you need to do this. You need to do something different with your life. And so I listened. I just listened to that voice. And I would say that taking that step has ultimately been the beginning of this compass that you were talking about.
I guess for me, the idea of dropping, from the sound of it, and again, if I'm putting words in your mouth, please correct me, but from the sound of what I'm hearing is it's almost like I pushed everything away. I got rid of all the noise in my life, white noise, whatever it may be, the naysayers, the negativity, the whatevers, the people that were kind of banding me or, pushing me down and oppressing me. I pushed all of that aside. And I found this true north, and I thought, you know what? It's going to be discovering me and my backpack, and we're going to go and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah.
And to me, that sounds so incredibly brave on one side of the coin, but on the flip side of that coin, also tremendously scary. Like, I wouldn't even know, like, again, I am the worst with directions. If I didn't have this series, the Alexas of the world, kind of guiding me, and my wife is a great navigator that just might have cost me $1. But when we go places, I'm like, okay, do I need to go left here? Do I need to go right here? And my wife is a great navigator in our relationship, of keeping us in that kind of lane that we need to stay in. But from the sound of it, you kind of pushed all that away, and it's like, nope, it's Alex or nothing, right?
Yeah. That's beautifully said. I would say that's exactly, what happened. And that's also what really needed to happen. And it's beautiful how you express it. Like, I had all this noise around me, all these expectations. And then I felt it was kind of like I was this bird that was in his cage, and wasn't able to get out, right? So I really just needed to come out and really just needed to explore life, experience it, really start discovering myself, right? And that's really the shift that really needed to happen for me, was to get out of my own environment. And I would say that's kind of where the self-discovery journey for me really began.
I think that's beautiful right there. I love the bird and the analogy of being caged up.
Yeah.
You know, you can kind of see some behind me. I don't know how well you keep track of, and maybe you're not a fan, and that's okay if you're not. But there's this college that I love dearly. It's the University of North Carolina. If you're around me long enough, you're probably going to see me wearing something light blue or something Carolina related. I get teased all the time because I live out in Oregon. Everybody's like, why can't you just cheer for an Oregon school? I'm like, because I can't. There was this amazing guy that went through the University of North Carolina. Maybe you've heard of him. I don't know, because, you know, I don't know how stuff travels across the Atlantic. But Michael Jordan, you've probably heard of that guy, I hope?
Absolutely. Of course I did.
Okay. All right. Just checking. I want to make sure Jordan has truly gotten international, because we hear about that in the States. But all right, just checking. So the other person that I was going to ask you about too is Cinderella. Yeah, I'm guessing you probably heard of her maybe a few times.
Yeah, maybe once or twice.
Maybe once or twice. Okay, so good. We're 2 for 2. That's fantastic. So here's my question. I don't know if you know this about Michael Jordan or not. I was actually fascinated to find this out recently, that when he first came into the NBA in 1985, which you don't have to tell me how old you were, but I'll tell you, I was 5, and I don't remember him coming in the league because I was 5. I was probably still playing with blocks or, you know, trying to figure out German. Who knows? I don't know. But but when he came into the league, the signature shoe that he wears, these Jordans that everybody covets and you know, will do whatever they can to get their hands on them. They're called Jordan 1s because it was the first like duration of these shoes. Anyway, when they came into the league, he couldn't wear them because the Chicago Bulls color scheme, their color uniforms did not match these shoes. And back in the day in the NBA, your shoes had to, you know, go in line with the color of the uniform. Right. Makes sense, right? Yeah. Follow me on that? Well, the NBA banned him. No way. He could not wear them. Banned him from wearing the Jordan 1s that are now like world famous, right? Yeah. And what's funny is Nike took advantage of that. Mm-hmm. They made this crazy commercial, and it's on YouTube. You can go take a look at this if you're interested. But he's bouncing a ball, and as he's bouncing it, the camera fades down. So it starts at his head and fades down to his shoes. And when it gets down to his shoes, there's a black box around these shoes. And it says, the NBA may ban Michael from wearing these, but we never will. How, like, when I saw that commercial on YouTube, I'm like, Nike, you are geniuses. Yeah. To think, because now everybody's like, I want to wear the banned shoes. Nobody's going to ban me from wearing these, right?
Exactly.
So when I'm hearing your story, it's like, I hear you say, nobody is going to ban me from doing this. Nobody is going to stop me from doing this.
Yeah.
Right? That shoe change to say, nope, I'm on this new path. Because I'm wondering about, I say all that to lead to this, because I had a friend of mine work for one of our local news stations. And part of what he did for the local news stations is he would go out and do the live remotes. So in other words, when the news crew would show up, he was that camera guy doing the live remote for the talent or the reporter, right? And in my little community of Eagle Point, Oregon, where I live, we had a gentleman that was shot by police officers, and there's some speculation about why and how, and there was an investigation and all that. And I don't want to necessarily talk about that per se, but in that moment for him, that was his stuck moment, because he was so distraught about it, not like emotionally distraught, but I think kind of on a deeper level, maybe emotionally. But in that moment, he realized and recognized that this isn't the life he wanted. Yeah. And so what I'm wondering is, when you're riding along in the ambulance as a paramedic, I'm guessing you were in an ambulance, right?
I was. Yeah.
Okay. So as you're riding along, going to the latest call or going to a call, and you're seeing the trauma and the tragedy and the bad of life and the ugliness that happens when a paramedic is needing to be, you know, used in a service capacity, how did that mess with you? Mm-hmm. And was that part of that stuck moment that you're like, man, I got to get out of this life because it is sucking the life out of me?
Huge. Oh man. Yeah. I love that you, mentioned that. No, that was a huge part. And I don't think I would have come to this turning point if I didn't have that moment. While I was going through my own stuff and going through my own hardships, I was seeing a lot of suffering. I was seeing a lot of, the relationship between life and death. And I was seeing a lot of people who were experiencing a lot of regret in their life and a lot of pain. And I think it was the experiences where I would say that affected me the most, where it wasn't necessarily anything too serious, but it was more those people, let's say, that would have stage 4 cancer, and they knew that they were at the end of their lives. And it was just being around them and just experiencing that, seeing how they approached life and seeing how they lost every meaning of life, and that was fundamentally scary for me, just seeing that. And just also this idea that I'm a very intuitive person, and I'm also, I would say I can feel very much into other people. And sometimes the feeling that I had when I was around other people was this idea that, man, I wish I thought I did everything right in my life, but it seems like I didn't. And now, I'm at the end of my life, and, I wish I did that. And it was kind of like that feeling, that's really what I got at that time. And then there was a part of me that was really screaming out, Alex, this is not your life. You're supposed to be doing something different. And that's kind of where that calling started coming.
So you mentioned having that life as a paramedic. You mentioned the noise around you, the people really saying, Alex, no, you're destined to do this. No, Alex, you're supposed to do this. Alex, by the way, if you don't know, you have to do this to have this quote unquote successful life. I'm air quoting that. But in that, you shoved all that away. You kind of muted, if we're podcasting terms, right? We're muting the microphone on all of those microphones that are speaking into our life. Mm-hmm. So none of that sound's coming to us now. Yeah. But now what is Alex doing? And it's weird to talk to you in third person when you're sitting right in front of me, but what are you doing now that has really maybe brought that fulfillment that you were seeking, that has really kind of woken you up and really making you come alive? You talk about how you have this love affair with people, and this fascination and this curiosity with people. Yeah. One, where do you think that comes from? And then two, walk that out for me. What does that look like in practicality?
Like I said, I'm a very, let's say, sensitive person, very emotionally in touch, intuitive. And I would say that definitely did not come without its hardships, based more on my own experiences, right? Because I, first of all, didn't know how to relate with it. I didn't know how to regulate myself, manage myself. And so I think the journey started more with relating to myself, building that relationship to myself. I kind of had to go on my own hero's journey, my own transformation, my own growth. As I mentioned, I was carrying a lot of emotional baggage. So there was a lot of shame from the past. There was a lot of, trauma-based experience that I was still holding on to. A lot of, depressive feelings, shame, anger, resentment, all the kind of nasty stuff that, a lot of us tend to hold on to. So, and having those experiences working as a paramedic, I realized I wanted to be free of that. I just wanted freedom. That's all I wanted, at the end of the day. But the freedom that I really wanted was that internal freedom, to be free inside, to feel joy, to feel bliss, to feel happiness. That's really what I wanted, right? So my journey, once I started traveling, was really about that, really pursuing that journey, pursuing that happiness. How do you become happy, and all that, and just seeing where my guidance is taking me, seeing where that journey is taking me. And I would say it was through the growth that I experienced in my life, through forgiving myself, through accepting myself, through appreciating and loving myself, through growing and everything, that I started recognizing everything that another person was experiencing. I was seeing that as well in me, right? And then also the other way around. I saw that my suffering as well, that in a lot of ways, other people were experiencing that. So what really allowed me was because I was able to see the complete opposite end of the spectrum, that negative part, that nasty part, where I was feeling at the lowest point of my life, right? And now I would say at a point where I've done a lot of growth, I've done a lot of work on myself, and I know so much more. So I would say it brought a lot of deep compassion and deep love and deep as well passion for what I'm doing. And yeah, just supporting people on their journeys.
So you talk about this kind of imaginary backpack
Yes.
of stuff
Yes.
that was shoved inside of it. I know for a lot of people, we have a lot of baggage, maybe from our childhood, from our parents, from, those that have just piled on top of us, whether it be, again, past experiences, or, maybe it was a bad church, or, you know what I mean? Like, we just have tons of stuff that gets kind of shoved into the backpack that we carry around with us.
Definitely.
And it's such a weight for so many, right? It's just such a weight for so many. And I would imagine, again, being in the paramedic and the medical field that you were in, you probably saw a fair amount of people that you could probably physically see. Not only did they have some health issues that you're responding to as far as a paramedic, but they probably had some emotional baggage in their backpack that they were carrying around.
For sure.
And so what I'm wondering is, for you, what do you think was the greatest thing that was weighing you down in your backpack, if you will?
I think it was those feelings of, actually, it was more the beliefs of not being enough and not being loved. But then again, it's so interesting, as a little child, because you're not able to discern between certain experiences that you have as a child, right? And because a young child can only relate to itself sometimes. And when it has a bad experience, let's say, where, a mother doesn't give him attention because maybe she's even busy. It doesn't even have to be anything dramatic, right? It's like, it's that moment, that absence of love that child will internalize and say, oh, she's not giving me attention. Maybe it's because I'm not enough. Maybe it's because there is something wrong with me, that I am not loved, right? And I would say it was those absence of experiences in my life, that emotional absence, that really built up, and as well starting to go to school, starting to get bullied. All these things kind of started building up in my life. And then I had all these this evidence, I would say in quotation marks, that I'm not enough, that I'm not loved, right? And it was like, since that, it was my identity, right? And I would say that was the biggest part of that emotional backpack I was carrying.
So you talk about, being bullied, you talk about maybe not feeling enough, about growing up with maybe some insecurities in not being loved the way you felt you should have been loved. How does that now translate to you as an adult? Has there been any kind of residual, after effect of that?
Only that I've been able to grow through that experience, and only that I've been able to understand so much more. I mean, I've gone deep into, psychology, deep into like spirituality and all these things, to really start making sense of our human experience, to start making sense, okay, why do we carry that emotional backpack with us, right? Why do we have so much pain? So I think it was that understanding through the growth as well, the ability to change the belief that I had, to discern that, it was actually not that, it was just a meaning that I created at the time, and start building exactly that absence of love that I felt I had, to actually express that within myself, right? Because maybe I didn't have it at the time, or it felt like I didn't have it, but now here is the opportunity for me to give it to myself. And I think that was the biggest thing that I really had to learn.
This self-discovery moment, right? These ideas, and again, digging into the philosophies and maybe the religions of the world and things of that nature, which I've heard people do, right? To find that comfort, to find that understanding, to find that shift, right? But for me, what I guess what I'm wondering about is, I talk to people so often, and they talk about almost like a scar in their soul, or a searing that has taken place. Was there a moment in your life that you really felt like, man, I look at that scar or that searing moment and think, okay, I'm going to make sure nobody ever feels the way I felt in that moment ever again. And I'm going to remind whoever that person may be that, hey, that moment, that scar, that searing moment, that doesn't have to define you. And I feel like maybe that's been your mission, and perhaps I would even, if it's not applicable, obviously, but you're calling now to make sure that others have not felt that way. Do you have that moment specifically?
Are you talking about a particular event, or are you talking if that is my action?
Maybe a particular event specifically, that again, really maybe defined you and said, I'm never gonna, I'm never gonna be back here again. I'm never gonna allow myself, one, to be back here, and then two, I'm gonna make sure that if I encounter anybody, because again, you've traveled so much, I would imagine you've probably encountered a few people a time or two, a lot, that you would remind them of that as well. That gentle reminder that they don't have to carry the backpack. They don't have to be defined by that searing moment. Do you have that moment for you? And if so, would you mind sharing that?
Definitely. There was, I would say, one defining experience for me when I was in New Zealand. I was actually already traveling for quite a while. I was on the road for around 1.5 years at the time. And that self-discovery journey very much already initiated. And I was mentioning as well how I was kind of like looking for happiness. I was looking for the meaning of life and how to really live a life full of joy and meaning, right? So I would say that experience was really to integrate that part of me that I felt was so caged in, and that what I was sharing before, right? So I would say that explorative side came out, that seeker, the wild guy, the free-spirited person. So I love that I had the opportunity to really experience everything outside of me, right? And I was in a relationship at the time, and that kind of ended. And I noticed how as soon as that relationship ended, I absolutely crumbled. And I saw how the foundation that I had of myself, the sense of worth that I had for myself was so fragile, was so brittle, that I really understood that, okay, I've gone everywhere. I've looked for that bliss, that happiness everywhere outside of me. And now I have to go the only place I haven't looked, and that was within me. So I needed to start looking there. And so that was kind of my path of starting to look into meditation, starting to yoga, looking into personal growth, all these, things. And, you were mentioning as well that there's this idea, like, maybe I wouldn't want another person to suffer like that. And I definitely don't want them to. But then again, I would distinguish between the events that would experience pain and as well the suffering that comes because of that event. Because I think the event in a lot of ways cannot be controlled, cannot be managed, cannot be, it's often outside of our own control, right? But the way we respond to it, that's our choice. The way we choose to handle that situation, the way we want to show up, that is something we can choose, right? And I would say I would definitely want to be a light in that area.
Yeah, I love that a lot, especially being a light to so many, because again, my experience has been there are so many people right now searching, seeking, in this stuck moment of life that they don't, one, maybe they don't realize that they're stuck. And then two, also, the idea of, okay, now that I recognize, okay, I'm unstuck. Okay, now where do I go? Now what do I need to do? Now how do I keep moving forward? Because I know where I was, I know where I want to go, but it's still a little foggy. It's still a little unclear on that. Like, how does Alex really define life?
Mm-hmm. Like the meaning of life, or what exactly?
We'll go with that. Yeah. How would you define the meaning of life for you?
Mm-hmm. The meaning of life for me. Oh, we're going really deep, eh? The way I really see it is we are in this, like, this might sound a little bit esoteric, but the way I would say it is that we've all come kind of as souls in this human experience, and we're here to kind of enjoy this experience, I would say, to really awaken to this experience and to really live life to its fullest, right? And when I say live to its fullest, I also mean those experiences that we might not even like that much, right? Because how can you have good experiences? How can you define good experiences if you haven't experienced bad experiences, right? Like, how can you discern what is the best experience that I've ever had if you haven't had experiences that were less of that, right? So I think this experience of life is really about building that relationship to everything that we're experiencing and just accepting it all, loving it all, and just embracing it all as it is. Because I think the biggest suffering that we have in life is our resistance towards that, our resistance towards, I don't want things to be that way. Things should be different. And I'm not even saying I'm there, definitely not, right? But I think that's really the journey, and that's what's so exciting to me, to really awaken to that. And then the other aspect I would also mention is that when we grow up, we naturally will have a sense of conditioning in our life. We will naturally have experiences that have hurt us, right? And that make us kind of feel small and not enough. And like I mentioned to you, I'm not loved, I'm not wanted, all these things, right? I think the human experience is really about awakening to the idea that all these things are lies, that they're not true, and that you're so much more than that. So for me, the experience of life is actually not about adding anything onto you, but it's actually more about letting go, taking layers off, and revealing the greatness, the boundless potential that is actually already within you. So this might sound really esoteric, and I hope other people are following me with this, but that, I would say, is my meaning of life.
No, that's great. And that's why I love asking that question, because I never know how someone's going to answer it, right? And the thing that I've had people kind of push back that knew me personally are like, listen, Neil, that's totally against maybe what you believe in. And I'm like, but that's my point in my show, is it's not my perspective. We're in your shoes today, which, our size 9, we're not sure if that's Europe or US, but it doesn't matter. Either way, it might be a struggle for me to get in those, but that doesn't mean that there isn't value in the struggle. Ooh, hashtag there's value in the struggle. I don't know. I just came up with my own hashtag.
That's pretty good. That's
all
right.
Fair enough. We'll tweet that out maybe later. But what I'm curious about, because I always like asking this question too, like a quote or a saying or something like that really resonates with you. And this one blew, like, mind blown, like hat. I had to hold it down because it was super windy maybe, but it like blew my mind when I read this. And I know this isn't your quote. You actually credit it to someone else, but it says the real voyage of discovery consists of not seeking new lands, but seeking new eyes. Why does that resonate with you so much?
Oh man, that quote is so beautiful. And it's one of my favorites, because the way I see it, a lot of us in life, when we want something in life, when we experience difficulties, what we do is we try to change our circumstances. We try to change something that's outside of ourselves, and we try to control that. We try to manipulate things sometimes. But I realized in my own life how exhausting that can be. And what I realized for me, that the more empowering way to go about this is not to change the outside, but rather to change the inside, to change my perspective. How am I looking at life? What is my view on life, right? It was Wayne Dyer that said, when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at change, right? And that's exactly what it's about. When you start changing your perspective on something, when you look at it something from a more of a higher perspective, man, like you probably won't even realize that as a problem anymore, right? Notice it's those moments when we're kind of like fearful and we're angry or something like that. We might consider something as a problem, but then in that same situation, notice when you're really feeling really happy, or I don't know, we all have those moments where we're so happy, right? That wouldn't even be considered as a problem in that moment. I would be like, oh, you know what, forget it. It's like, you just brush it off. And that's exactly what it's about. It's the perspective, right? It's really about changing that, because I think that's ultimately the only thing that we can really change.
That was amazing, by the way. Thank you for that. It was so good. So good. I love that so much. So good. So you can't really see it in the Zoom, but I promise you, just for let's get it turned the right way, but it says a different perspective on life. And I wear 2 bracelets on my wrist. I've started wearing them One is a sky blue, in case you're wondering, and one of them is a sky blue with a little bit of white in it, so it has like that cloud effect, if you will. But I started wearing these bracelets as a way of, promoting the show, and if I do events, to hand out these bracelets. But every day I look down at these bracelets and I go, okay, let me seek a different perspective on life. Because I think so many times I get locked into my perspective and think I can't see that other person's point of view. I can't feel what they're feeling. I can't see what they're feeling. A great friend of mine challenged me so many years back, probably when I was around, 13 or 14. He makes this statement. He says, you know what? You need to learn this 2-sentence prayer. Now, I know the minute I said prayer, you're like, ears got turned off. You're like, I'm done talking. But hear me out on this, right? Hear me out on this. Give me a second. His theory is this, and it's a 2-sentence prayer. It says, Lord, whoever your Lord may be. Now, my Lord is Jesus Christ. Your Lord may not be. The Lord, whoever you're putting in that space there, Lord, help me see, in this case, I'll put you in here. Lord, help me see Alex the way you see Alex. And then I stop talking. I just listen. And then the second part of that prayer is Lord, help me feel for Alex what you feel for Alex. And again, I stop talking and I listen. And to me, that 2-sentence prayer, when I heard that so many years ago, has changed my life to the point where now I'm, 41 years old and still remembering that. So when I encounter somebody that I don't necessarily agree with, or maybe that I don't necessarily like. Because again, I think we're called to love everybody, but do we have to like everybody? There's some speculation on that, right? What I'm wondering when I hear you say that, that's what I feel like you're saying in a sense. Now, I know you didn't say it like that, and maybe you wouldn't feel that way, but I hear you saying that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, it's definitely what I am, expressing, obviously in my own words. And, from what you were sharing just now, and I would really say these 2 sentences that you're sharing are incredibly beautiful. And what really came to mind from me is this idea of being present, this idea of being 100% in the moment, because when you're in the present moment and when you're actually seeing someone and not being so caught up in your own way of thinking and your judgments and your story, you can actually see the person. It's kind of like when that mirror is being dirty and you're just kind of brushing it off, you're cleaning it, and now you're able to see the person properly as they are, not what your mind is telling you.
That's so amazing. So last question, and then I want to play a game with you. You're good with games, I hope, right?
Let's just do it.
All right, here we go. Last question for you. So all the places that you've traveled, I know you've been across this great world that we live in. Yeah. I mean, you talk about New Zealand, you're in Germany now. You've been in all these places. Like, what was the number one place that you were in, and maybe why that was your favorite?
I would say hands down, it was India. Yeah, because India is just so different from any other country. And it was exactly that idea of it being so different that had such an incredible impact on my life. And, just talking about India already puts a big smile on my face and just makes me happy because it had such a profound change in my life.
I too love the people of India. I have actually gotten to interact with a gentleman from India, kind of reached out to me on Instagram. I was like, hey, you want to be on my show? And I had no idea who this guy was. He just DM'd me and was like, hey, let's do it right now. And I'm like, oh, okay, it's like 7 a.m. here. I mean, I have no idea what time it is in India. I had to Google it really quick. It was late there. I think it was even like the following day or something. I don't know how that works.
All right.
Time change and all that. But I too love the people of India. In fact, outside the United States, India is my number one country as far as downloads go. So I've always loved India for that reason. So that's cool. So what about India made, again, you've been all over. What about India was so good for you in that respect?
I would say it's just because the culture is so different. I think it's exactly that part. I mean, I grew up in a Western country, lived a Western life, right? And then coming over there and seeing kind of what looks in the first glance as chaos, but there is a sense of organization in that chaos. And I would say for me, what India is, it is the deepest and most authentic expression of what life to me really is. So that sounds a bit maybe very packed up right now, but that's kind of the way I view India.
No, I think that's great. Again, I I would love to go there one day. In fact, I had a guy on a while back that was talking about, India, and he's been over there like 51 some odd times, and it's just insane to think about. But yeah. So I know in Berlin there's this amazing stadium. I know you're maybe not a huge sports fan from the sound of it, but maybe you are. I don't know. Maybe you're like the next Pele of soccer, or who knows? I don't know. But what I'm wondering about is they have the Olympic Stadium still in Berlin, right? Is it still there?
I mean, I assume so. I mean, I love sports, but I'm not a big soccer fan.
Oh, well, that's good because I don't know anything about soccer. So we're
Right.
You're in good company. But in that stadium, according to Google, the Olympic Stadium seats 74,475 people. That's a lot of people, right?
Wow. That's a lot of people.
Right. So imagine just for a second, like I hand you the microphone and we got people from all walks of life. We got young, we got old, we got all kinds of people. But I hand you, Alex, the microphone and I say, Alex, this is your moment. This is your time in the sun. The spotlight is yours. The stage is yours. What would you say to the people in this group? Again, they're from all walks of life. So what would you say to them just in this moment for you? And then we'll play our game.
No pressure, eh? Putting me on the spot.
Not at all. No, but again, this is your moment. So what would you say to them?
Sure. Okay. I would put them in a situation where they'd have to close their eyes and they would have to imagine for a moment as if today was their very last day. Their very last day of life. How would they be living? How would they be showing up? What would their relationship be to themselves, but as well, all those things that they got so caught up in their lives? Would they even still matter? How would they be showing up in their relationships? How would they be showing up with their loved ones and the people that they really care about? And what is one thing that they maybe want to do, or that they're going to do, that they've always been afraid of doing, and just decide to do that one thing? I think if you really put yourself into that mindset and start living life like that every single day, you will have a beautiful life.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really good.
I don't know. It just kind of came to me.
I really like that a lot. No, that's really awesome. So Alex, here's my question. And then, like I said, we're going to play a game, but if somebody's hearing you right now, right, and they're really resonating with you and they're really like, man, I don't know how Neil keeps finding these amazing people with wisdom, and truths and bombs and, and all this perspective. Like, I love what he's saying. Like, how can someone get in connection with you and how can they reach out to you and say, man, Alex, I really want to know more about what you're talking about and what you're saying. Again, that stuck moment and now that not stuck moment anymore. How can they connect with you?
Right. So for me for the moment, the best two platforms to kind of contact me are Facebook on Alex Lehann, and as well on Instagram on alex.c.lehann, and currently working on a website. So we'll have that up and running in a few months' time. But those are kind of the best platforms for the moment.
Awesome. So guys, go do that if you're interested in knowing more about Alex and what he's doing. And again, man, you just been so awesome today. So it really is so cool, right? This University of North Carolina thing. It's really bad around here. So we're gonna play this game called Senseless. Now, Alex, I'm putting you on the spot. Being a former, paramedic, medical guy that you've been, I'm thinking somewhere along the journey they taught you about the senses of life, right? The senses of the human body, right? I hope.
The five senses?
Yeah, good. So we have five senses, right? Okay. Man, I was really hoping you knew that we had five senses. So that's not the game, but here is the game involving that. So we play this game called Senseless involving the five senses. So I'm going to roll. This is the cup. There is a die in there. You can see that. So I'm going to roll, and based on your number, you get to answer this question. So here we go. So number 2, and you can see that, I hope. That is actually a 2, even though it's backwards. Okay, good.
I see the number 2.
Somebody accused me of cheating a while back. So I'm like, how can I cheat at my own game? First off. So let's stop doing that. Stop sending me tweets about me cheating at my own game. All right. So here is the question for you. Who is touching your life right now?
Like who was a great influence in my own life?
I'm going to just let you interpret that how you desire. So who is touching your life right now?
I would say it's a mindset coach that has been a deep inspiration in my journey. His name is Peter Crone. So for anyone who is going through any struggles, for anyone who is kind of struggling with, sense of insecurity or feeling like they're not enough, I really encourage you guys to check him out. His work is incredible, and I've been growing so much as a person, and I see him as a role model and also someone I would like to step into his shoes one day.
That's fantastic. So Alex, I just want to thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me. Thank you for being such an amazing host with all your, expansive, great energy. I absolutely love being on, and I had a blast.
Well, it is truly my pleasure. And as I said, I just thank you so much. And maybe one day, who knows, our paths will cross. Maybe it's in Germany. Maybe it's here in the States. I don't know. Maybe it's in India. I mean, that would be wacky.
Exactly.
Like we're walking down a street, and I don't know any streets in India, so somebody's gonna have to help me with that. But maybe we like bump into each other at a cafe in India, and we have I'm guessing they have coffee there. I hope they have coffee in India, right?
They have coffee there.
Okay. I was really hoping that they did, because I wouldn't mind having a cup of coffee in India. But Alex, again, thank you so much, and I just want to close out today with just this thought. And here's the thought: is I loved what Alex said. Like, in that moment, close your eyes and really ask yourself, who do you want to be in this life? Who around you are you sharing that light and that love and that experience with? And here's the question I would ask you on top of that. So there's two questions, like who are you sharing your light and love with? But then the other question I have for you is, why are you still carrying that Dora the Explorer emotional baggage around with you? Remember, she had that backpack, right? She had all kinds of stuff in it. Like, seemed like she could do anything with that backpack. I know I'm dating myself with Dora the Explorer, but the point is still there. There's been so much stuff that you've shoved into that backpack and you've been carrying it around forever. Is it time finally to lay it down? And I'm going to go with another cartoon on you. Is it time to let it go? Is it time to just say, it's gone? It's going to take time. It's going to take a process. It's not an overnight thing. But I do want to tell you that I think our guest today helped us illustrate that a lot, that you really got to take that down. You got to get rid of that. So if that resonates with you, please let me know. opspodcast.com, click on connections. Just leave me a little note. Drop me a little note and say, hey, I was able to do that, and here's how. Or maybe even leave me a voicemail. I would love to share your voicemail on the show in a future episode. So if you're interested in doing that, you can do that at opspodcast.com as well. Click on that voicemail, leave the voicemail there, and if I use it in the show, I'll send you a really cool bracelet that I was talking about today. I don't mind doing that. So just remember this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. I want to thank my guest, Alex, one more time. Guys, stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.